Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session on email archiving, mentorship, and a survey of practice. My name is Chris Prom, and I am the Associate Dean for Digital Strategies at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. We're here today to tell you about a survey that we've been doing as part of our project in the email archiving, building capacity and community project. I'll tell you a little bit more about that program in a session, in a minute, I should say, but before I do so, I'd like to just turn things over to my colleague here at Illinois, the Email Archives Community Fellow, Ruby Martinez. Ruby?
Yes, hello. Hi, everyone. I am Ruby Martinez, as Chris said, and I'm very happy to be here alongside Chris. I am a recent graduate of the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and with that, I would like to walk you through our agenda today. So first, Chris will provide an overview of the EABCC project, and followed by the email archiving survey results provided by me. And together, Chris will do the analysis and future directions of email archiving, and followed by the discussion becoming part of the community, which we will discuss the mentorship that we've had and how that's been beneficial to me. And with that, I'll pass it over to Chris.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Ruby. So just as a little bit of background here, the project that I'll be describing to you is part of a re-grant program here at the University of Illinois Library. This is really work that's intended to bring forward the community after some prior research work that I had been involved with, both as part of writing a DPC report on email archiving and also as part of a Mellon-funded project to convene a working group to discuss the future of email archives. So I've been involved in some coordinating work in the community. I'll just be honest, I'm not somebody who, as a practitioner, does email archiving myself, but I've been very interested in helping the community assess needs and bring tooling and other solutions forward. Part of that work is the Email Archives Building Capacity and Community Project. We do have a project website, which I'd encourage all of you to look into. But essentially, this is a re-grant program that the University of Illinois is administering with some support from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. We have specific goals as part of this project, which are supporting processing improvements and increased tool functionality, developing a community of practice that establishes a baseline of email acquisition, processing, discovery, and delivery services. And finally, our third goal is highlighting specific processed email collections. The project itself has, in its first grant funding round, provided 5 projects, which are 4 of which are developing new tools for the community. These are the ones from Harvard University, Columbia University, the University of Chicago, and the State University of New York at Albany. And we also have a project which is supported by COSA, Council of State Archivists, which is assessing and preparing state archives to pick the best email archiving solutions for those. So as part of our grant project, we've really noticed that a lot of institutions have need to build easier email archiving workflows, and this is really the kind of work that the project is intended to assess. But we did notice some very specific things while we've been providing information back to the community through our prior presentations, and I'd like to turn things back over to Ruby now so she can tell you both about the trends that we noticed and also the survey that we did to delve a little bit deeper into some of the issues that we've been uncovering.
Yes, thanks, Chris. So I want to provide some background on our session. In previous presentations, Chris and I usually open with a poll to assess our audience and their current email archiving practices. We have done this poll about 3 times with varying audiences. So our first poll was done at SAA's Archives Records 2021 conference in June. As you can see from our first poll, a majority of the audience indicated they do not currently access an email, or that they've acquired email but are not actively processing email for long-term preservation. This poll is a great way to demonstrate the need to bring the email archiving community forward and how the EABCC's projects are working together to bridge some existing gaps. In addition, we did the same poll at the Council of State Archivists work meeting, and you can see a greater distribution of responses between the 4 answer choices. As Chris mentioned, COSA is currently working to address some existing gaps to bring more state archives into the email archiving community. Lastly, we did this poll at an email archiving workshop provided by the Digital Preservation Coalition. The workshop's audience was primarily internationally based. Once again, you can see the disparities in institutions that are currently preserving email. Doing these polls encouraged our desire to gain a deeper understanding of how many institutions have an active archiving program and some of the obstacles these institutions face, as well as COSA's own needs assessment survey provided to all the state archives. These activities provided a great foundation to our own survey distributed regionally to archives, museums, and libraries in Illinois, which brings us to our next portion, our survey results. Before we get into all the data, I wanted to provide an overview of the survey. If you could please, yes, thank you. We wanted to start with a survey that targeted institutions in Illinois to assess any areas that needed refinement before opening the survey to a larger sample. So the survey was distributed over a 2-week period at the beginning of September. It had a 17% response rate with a total of 68 respondents out of 396. The survey was broken down into 3 sections: demographics, current practice, assessments of needs, and the survey sample was primarily taken from the Illinois Archival Repository Directory. And if you continue on to the next slide, you can see we had 68 responses that varied from museums, college or university archives to corporate and/or business archives. As you can see from this pie chart, the sample primarily consisted of college or university archives, public library or public archives, and museums. I wanted to clarify that the other portion indicates private archives, regional film archives, nonprofit organizations, just to name a few. And if we move on to the next slide, we'll see the reported number of full-time equivalent employees. The results are somewhat skewed in the 21+ category because it appears some of our respondents might have been reporting numbers for a larger parent organization, something we will want to clarify in our larger study. But as you can see, more than half of our survey sample noted 0 to 2 employees working in the archives or in their institution. This is a very alarming number because, as you know, or as has been noted across many presentations, trying to build the capacity to archive email or to archive just in general requires people who are there to do it. So this is just very surprising. I don't know, Chris, if you want to jump in to say anything about that.
Yeah, Ruby, I think it just indicates that whatever software we as a community develop to facilitate email archiving, it needs to work in a wide range of institutions, and in particular at institutions with a relatively small number of employees. We'll see, interestingly, as we go through the survey here, what some of the bigger institutions are doing, but I'll just ask people to put a pin in this notion of having software that's really, really accessible, even in your lone arranger type repositories.
Yes, so this general assessment, we did a general assessment of our survey sample, which this question comes from the polls that we've mentioned earlier. And we wanted to assess how disparate responses would be. And so as you can tell, a large portion of our sample does not currently access an email, and those numbers just get smaller and smaller as you go further into these answer choices or these categories. Although the sample is not entirely representative of Illinois, you can infer that there are notable gaps across institutions. And in addition, respondents were also asked to list current software, if any they were using. Here's a word cloud demonstrating some of their answers. I would like to note that because a large portion of our respondents indicated they do not archive email, this is a very limited selection of software. A few respondents noted they were currently in the process of selecting email archiving tools to get started. This indicates that institutions are not in the loop of current tool developments, and this is probably an area of assessment that we can target just to get that word out. And if you follow on to the next slide, the main portion of our survey we wanted to focus on top obstacles institutions are facing. Initially, this question was framed as to list the top 3 obstacles that are faced by your institution. Unfortunately, the way this was formatted, we weren't able to limit the answer choices to just 3, so some respondents did indicate more than 3 answer choices. Nonetheless, as you can see here, the top 2 obstacles relate to the lack of training and technology, more so than the choices like scale and quantity and lack of cooperation. We did have an option for respondents to write in, and one common write-in was the lack of time or the lack of staff. Overall, we were very happy that people took the time to complete the survey and leave some in-depth comments. As you can see on the next slide, we wanted to highlight some comments left by the respondents that we found interesting. It is evident that many institutions find email to be of value, but circumstances like lack of training, staff, and time play large roles in an institution's capacity to archive email. These responses offer valuable insight into the regional capacity for email archiving, and it's just been a great way to assess our current capacity, or Illinois' current capacity, and just what areas we would like to target. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Chris.
Great. So thank you so much, Ruby. As I said at the beginning, when we started, this project, and when we started going out and presenting about it, we noticed a real gap in the community, which was that a lot of institutions had a deep interest in email archiving, but really weren't engaged in doing it on an active basis in their own institutions. That's another way of saying one of the things we noticed in an even more deeper way as part of this survey that Ruby administered and that Ruby developed, is that there is a huge gap between the theory and practice of email archiving. If you look at some of the literature out there, some of the literature that I myself have been involved with, there's a heavy emphasis on developing open source tooling and developing workflows that can be implemented in a range of repositories. But unfortunately, the vast majority of archives that are out there just simply are not either acquiring email, or if they are acquiring it right now, it's simply not sure what to do with it. One of the things we did, and I asked Ruby to do, was kind of classify the types of software and approaches that people are using. And you can see here, the vast majority have either none down, or they're looking for a really simple, kind of let's push the button approach, which you would find with something like PDF, or in fact, doing things like archiving email using their own native client applications, whether those are things like Google and Outlook or what have you. It's nice to see that a few institutions are using Preservica or preserving tools, or using open source tools, but really that's not where the community is, and that's not what the community is currently doing. A little bit more analysis here. There are training solutions available. There are things that people can look at. I would recommend the resources of the Digital Preservation Coalition, as well as the Society of American Archivists, but those could be more widely available. And again, as I mentioned, the community really has a desire for an open and a somewhat simpler solution. One of the final things I'd just like to point out is this project really did point to the need to build capacity within our own institution. I was not shocked, but a little bit surprised to find one of my own colleagues here at Illinois wrote in with comments along the lines that we're in a large institution and we know that email archiving is possible, but we see it as someone else's job. And we really haven't confronted it ourselves. So to me, that indicated a little bit that we needed to get our own house in order, or maybe look at the application of some of these tools in our own repository, which is something that we're going to be doing. And in fact, will be an opportunity that we'll provide Ruby here. So I'd just like to close a little bit by asking Ruby yourself to reflect a little bit on the experience. One of the major takeaways from the survey is that email archiving community is small, and that institutions don't really feel overly connected to it. So I'm just wondering, Ruby, thinking back on your whole experience with the project, what do you think have been some of the biggest aha moments that you've had come across as part of doing this survey and the mentorship you've gone through with the project?
Well, coming into this project, I didn't realize how small the digital preservation community really is, much less the email archiving community. At first, it didn't feel like that because this project allowed me to connect with people and institutions working towards the same goals and who were already embedded in the community. So getting further into the EABCC program, it's evident that even though the funded programs are targeting existing gaps, there is still a need for the community to expand, especially to smaller institutions. And it's just been very eye-opening to be on the inside, but not necessarily in the inside, and trying to just get more institutions or to get more involved in the ways that I can with this project, and just trying to get that message out.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And thank you all for attending our session here. And we look forward to the chat. Bye now.
Bye.